A firm system for your exam process is essential for working smarter, not harder. Not only that, it is essential to increase production, collections, and profits. This is where the rubber hits the road. You could have every other system running smooth as silk, but if the patient doesn't understand what you're presenting, they aren't going to get the dental work done. There are 3 sections to the exam process. Number 1, the connection. Number 2, the download. Number 3, the review. These are 3 things that need to be completed before we talk about increasing case presentation. Number 1, connecting with the patient. Most doctors will come in the op and start with some small talk with the patient. Some docs don't do enough and some do way too much. Aim for the 1 to 2 minutes area max. That is all it takes to connect with someone. Hopefully you have some secret system of remembering a thing or two about the patient before you go in the operatory. For instance, maybe in your huddle meeting, you or your team member might mention the patient had just had a baby or got a new job or just graduated, something, anything like that. It's really just a matter of clicking on the patient notes before entering the op. Back in the old days, we had a bright green piece of paper that we all jotted down something if we learned something new about that patient that day. And we always looked over it before we came in to the operatory. Everyone needs to be constantly adding to that patient list. It doesn't matter what you do, just make sure you and your team know how to talk about your patients in a way that will create an emotional connection and in turn create loyalty. Other than keeping track of bits of information, another tip to connect with your patients is be a chameleon. If they are loud, fun, and outrageous, be loud, fun, and outrageous. If they're quiet and anxious, be quiet and comforting. Change and adapt to their comfort zone. Team members that do this connect very quickly with their patients. The third tip, never one-up the patient. If you ask how their weekend was and they said we went camping on our truck, don't respond with, well, I went to the Bahamas. Just doesn't come across very well. The connection section of the exam takes 1 to 2 minutes. It doesn't take long to emotionally connect with a person that creates loyalty. Find some secret service way to do it and do it quickly, and then be a chameleon. You will find that you will quickly bond with your patients, become friends, and they will be loyal to you and return. Okay, let's move on to section 2, which is the more extensive part of the exam process. That's the download of information. This is where you can really increase your case acceptance. This is information given from the hygienist or assistant to the doctor. So many doctors come into an operatory to do an exam and completely ignore their rock star hygienist or assistant. They are there to help you with your case presentation. In the next video, we'll dive into the importance of delegation, but for now, help your employees help you by taking a moment and saying the words, hygienist, tell me what you found and what you and our patient have talked about today. Practice the script over and over. If the doctor does not say these words by the time the mirror and explorer in their hands reach the patient's mouth, interrupt them by saying, doctor or patient name, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but can I just take a second and let you know what we've discussed? I have yet to meet one patient who is offended by this. In fact, they're appreciative. Think about how many times have you gone to the medical doctor and you go into the room with the nurse and they ask you why you're there and what meds you're on, and they take your blood pressure and then they leave. Then half hour later, the doctor comes in without the nurse and you're like, do I need to repeat everything all over again? Don't do that. We're better than that. Information downloaded to the doctor includes review of the x-rays, intraoral photos, gingiva health, oral cancer screening, caries risk assessment. Even if nothing was found, the hygienist should say something like, doctor, we took some x-rays and at first glance, I didn't see anything with the teeth, bone, or nerves that I had a question about. But I told her we'd wait and see what you thought. The patient and I also took a look at their mouth together with the help of our intraoral camera and TV screen. Then we reviewed together her gum tissue health, and we have no pocketing, inflammation, or bleeding that would indicate infection. Our patient does have a high caries risk assessment because some medications that cause dry mouth that she's taking and her love for Diet Coke. So I told her we recommended a fluoride varnish treatment for her and even some home fluoride prescription strength toothpaste. Our Diagnodent scores are charted, and I will walk you through each one that is above normal. Doctor, I did have a few questions about a couple of teeth in the mouth that I want to walk through with you now. Next, as a hygienist, I would remind the doctor to place urgency on the treatment by saying something like, doctor, I told the patient that you would be categorizing treatment into acute, urgent, preventative, and cosmetic, so we could prioritize appointments. I will discuss this more in course 4.9. Big takeaways from this verbiage, the phrase, but I told the patient we would wait and see what you think. This way, all team members can discuss possible diagnoses and treatment plans without making any diagnosis. If you're wrong, the doctor can always say to the hygienist, I can see why you might suggest that, but I would do X, Y, and Z instead of A, B, and C for this reason. As a hygienist, I always presented worst case scenario so that the doctor would always look like the good guy and be more conservative. Another big takeaway, the bigger the TV screen with the intraoral cameras, the higher your case acceptance. If you're not taking intraoral photos and displaying them on a humongous flat screen TV, you're missing out on a huge increase in case acceptance. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and I have seen this proven over and over. At this time, the doctor might say something like, okay, so far so good. My hygienist and I are going to talk in code for a second, and we will be sure to let you know what this all means when we are finished. At this time, the two of you both go tooth by tooth in the same order, every patient, every time. My dad, who is a dentist, and I always started with the number 1 or 2, and then went all the way over to 16 and 17, and then around to 32. This way, we never missed anything. As my doctor was looking at the teeth, I might say something like, hey, would you please look at the occlusal of number 4, and so on. As we came around to the interiors, I would tell the doctor about any cosmetic concerns the patient might have had. For instance, I might say, as the doc rounds around to number 6, doctor, I asked the patient if there was anything about their smile they would like to change. I personally think they have a terrific smile, but of course, I always ask because it's always surprising to me how picky people are. The patient said that the space between number 7 and number 8 had always bothered her. I told her there are lots of ways to fix that, and we would wait and see what you thought. We did discuss different options of bonding, clear liners, veneers, and braces. I gave her a time frame and a ballpark investment for each. She's leaning towards some quick bonding. What do you think, doc? There are several things I want to make sure you understand here. During the download of information, the script stays the same every time, no matter what the diagnosis is. Even if there is no diagnosis. The diagnosis might be they have complete health. That is still a diagnosis. Now let me tell you a story on how important this is and how important it is to build value in everything you did, even though they are completely healthy, have no cavities, no gum disease, no treatment, and you're not going to see them for 6 months. When my oldest son was 3 years old, he fell down a rope ladder on a playground. He was crying, he was sad, he was a mess. I checked him over, wiped his tears, and he seemed okay. Until that night, I was putting his pajamas on and twisted his arm, and he said, ow. Well, I told my husband, I think we need to take him in for an x-ray. My husband said, no, he's fine. He'll be all right. It's just his wrist. There's so many bones in there, he doesn't, they won't even cast it. And as a young wife, I'm like, okay, he's probably fine. Next day, put his shirt on. I'm embarrassed to say it took me till day 3 to tell my husband, nope, I'm taking him in. I don't care if there's no break. I just need to know for sure. I need to know a diagnosis of health. Well, it was broken. But I'm gonna admit to you that there are times when I've taken x-rays on patients and I'm like, I hope there's cavities. I hope there's cavities so that there's a value to the patient. That's the stupidest thought ever. There should be value to the patient when there aren't any cavities. We should say something like, I'm so glad we took these x-rays so we know for sure that you don't have any cavities today. Congratulations. So build value in what you do no matter what. No matter if there's health or disease, it's valuable. You need to do all those screenings no matter what. People need to hear 3 to 5 times what you're doing and what is going on in their mouth before it actually sinks in. By sticking to a script, it also ensures that you don't miss anything. Even with a script, 2 sets of eyes are better than 1. And with both of you reviewing each of these things together, it helps deliver a very thorough examination. Third section, review of findings. Sit the patient up. Scoot your chair so that you are knee to knee and eye to eye with the patient. I can't tell you how important this is. I once closed a case of scaling and root planing on the dentist's sister-in-law that 4 other hygienists could not close. And I am convinced it was because I stopped what I was doing, sat her up, and looked her in the eye. She knew I was serious and that I was not going to move forward. She scheduled the treatment and got better. When you sit them up, doctor, tell them again, what did the x-rays show? What did the intraoral photo show? Gingiva health, oral cancer screening, and caries risk assessment. And then tell them what you offer. You offered this many fillings, a crown, this X, Y, and Z. Then lastly, you review And of course, if you're interested in changing that look of your smile, we can do that little bonding for little time and not much money. That is how you ensure a complete and thorough exam for every patient every time. Make sure you have some kind of system to memorize the script. Download and laminate my free DIY practice management script as well, and my exam form that I used for years as a hygienist so that I could keep track of all my info that I needed to download to the doctor. You can laminate both and use them over and over again, or just use them as a starting point and create your own. Either way, I highly recommend laminating them and keeping them in your ops so that new hires can review them and memorize the script as well. It makes your onboarding much simpler. They will know the expectation of information to deliver during the exam. That's it. Up next, delegation of duties to increase doctor production. If you have any questions, shoot me an email.